Welcome to this special African edition of Burning Earth Radio. This is your host, Gerard Spring, coming to you from the island of El Hierro. So, coming over on the ferry yesterday to the island of El Hierro, which is the western and southernmost of the Canary Islands, we noticed it was a little bit hot, a little bit hotter than usual in the Canary Islands, and there's been some changes in the weather patterns here recently, especially over the past couple of days, and I think it's really instructive to take a look at them because it explains really well how climate systems and larger climatological features can translate into local scale weather changes and weather patterns. El Hierro is a beautiful island, and it's the youngest of the Canary Islands, and it has a lot of really interesting geological features and geological structures. Additionally, El Hierro is a UNESCO World Biosphere Reserve due to the fact that it has many endemic species living here on the island. It's really a precious biome, both in terms of marine biology and in terms of terrestrial biology. So it's very, very important to protect it, and as well as to understand how weather patterns can affect the organisms living on the island. So without further ado, let's swing over here into Earth Null School and take a look at what's going on. So we can see here over the Canary Islands that the El Hierro is about here. And what generally happens in terms of the wind patterns is the Azores High brings down cool moist air from the north here along the coast of Africa, and this brings a very moderate temperature to the Canaries relative to the Sahara Desert to the east. And what's happened in this case is that the Azores High can be seen displaced here to the west. You can see this circulation here over the center of the Atlantic Ocean. It's a very large structure, and here you can see the trade winds flowing down over here towards South America. So swinging back over here to the Canary Islands and zooming in here on the west coast of Africa, we can get a better sense of what's going on. What's happening here is that because the Azores High has been displaced to the west, there is a large outflow here from the Sahara Desert, bringing very, very warm air to the Canary Islands. And this structure actually develops up in the atmosphere as well. So it's not existing just at the surface. If we move up further, even to 850 hectopascals, we still have this flow off the coast of Africa. And this is bringing very, very warm air to the regions, anomalously warm, about 10 degrees anomalously warm, as well as record temperatures to both the central islands and the western islands, and perhaps the eastern islands as well. With this outflow coming from the Sahara Desert, it's also very interesting to take a look at what's going on with the relative humidity. Considering that this air is coming off of the Sahara, where the relative humidity is about 13%, we would expect that this air over the Canaries would be very, very dry, perhaps much drier than usual. And if we investigate some of the humidity values in the islands, we'll find this to be true. We can see, for example, here on the island of Tenerife, we have about 43% relative humidity. And here on Gran Canaria, an even lower values, about 26% relative humidity. And similar values perhaps over here on Lanzarote and Fuerteventura. And typically the humidity values in the Canary Islands hover between 60% and 70% with this air coming from the Azores High complex. So if we swing over here and take a look at that, we can see that this air is much more moist. And indeed, these humid, cool airs coming down from the north are what bring the cool temperatures to the Canary Islands that we typically see. So in addition to very warm air, we also have very, very dry air, which is very problematic for some of the endemic species which are living particularly on the northern sides of the mountains on the islands. So another thing I would like to take a look at is the dust extinction and the amount of particulates in the atmosphere, because with this wind, you're going to get a lot of dust coming over the Canaries as well. So if we swing over here and take a look at particulates, in particular this DU, and what this DU is, this is the dust extinction coefficient. And what this refers to is the aerosol optical thickness at 550 nanometers due to dust. And the higher this number is, the more dust there is in the atmosphere. So what we can see is happening here is that the winds are coming off the Sahara Desert, and the absence of the Azores High basically pulls this air out, and it's bringing large clouds of dust over the Canary Islands, which can be seen as well as with the absence of blue skies, there's a very thick haze of dust that's been showing up in the atmosphere. So if we zoom out here and get a better sense of how this structure fits in to the overall climate picture, we have the Azores High over here to the west, which is relatively free of dust, and then we have all of this dust coming out over the extreme eastern Atlantic Ocean, pulling all these dusts off from Africa, both to the south along the West African coast here, as well as here in the Canary Islands and over Western Sahara. So also, if you want to swing over here and look at the temperatures, we can see that with this dust is coming a lot of warm air. So here on the coast of Western Sahara, we have very warm temperatures, about 30 degrees, 32.1 here of the western coast of Africa. And over here in El Hierro, we have what appears to be 22 degrees Celsius, but in fact, there's a lot of kind of microclimatological things going on so that this temperature is much higher than 22 degrees Celsius. If you actually are here on the islands and on the coastal regions of the islands measuring temperatures as high as 30, perhaps even 35 in particular spots, which is a record high for this time of year for the Canary Islands. So if we want to swing over here and take a look at the temperature anomaly map, we can see that the Canary Islands are situated here, and we have a temperature anomaly of about plus 10 degrees, which is about what we're experiencing on the islands right now. In particular, on the coast of El Golfo here in El Hierro, we had temperatures of about 35 degrees Celsius, and we can see that this corresponds to about a 10-degree temperature anomaly plus temperature anomaly. And we can see that this temperature anomaly here in the Canaries is a development of a much larger temperature anomaly, which is developed here off the coast of Africa. Morocco here, also many areas plus 10 degrees warmer than normal, as well as in Algeria, some very warm areas, and especially here in Western Sahara as well, near the Canary Islands and in Mauritania as well. And this temperature anomaly has basically been developing especially strongly over the past couple of weeks. This past month or so, we've had quite warm temperatures here in this particular region of Africa. So I think it's really important to take these kinds of effects into consideration, because what you have here is a destabilization of the Azores High, which is a large-scale climatic feature, translating over into weather patterns shifting in different regions. And although this can happen, this is definitely something that can happen in the Canary Islands, it's not something that happens particularly often, and it also usually doesn't happen so early in the year. If this is going to happen, it's perhaps more of a summertime thing, a late summertime thing, where you have these types of very warm temperatures moving over the ocean and bringing warm air into the Canary Islands. And in particular, there's a lot of pine forests on the island of El Hierro, as well as on the island of La Gomera to the east. There's a very large rainforest, which is now baking in very warm temperatures off to the east. The so-called Laurasilva, which is the last of the laurel forests remaining in the North African region. So in addition to this, there's a lot of dusts coming in as well. These warm temperatures can be a big problem for agriculture. And if you remember from a couple of shows ago where we discussed the very strong winds coming from the ocean, the strong winds causing problems for banana plantations and things like this, and agricultural things. So now on top of that, we have very, very warm temperatures moving in with this easterly wind coming off the north coast of Africa. So I hope you enjoyed this African edition of Burning Earth Radio. If you did, please comment, like, and subscribe, and I'm looking forward to having you along in the next one. Thanks so much for listening.